Welcome to Couch Potato Theater here on the Fandom Podcast Network, where we celebrate our favorite movies. You may own your favorite movies digitally or on physical media. However, when they air on cable TV or land on your streaming channel, you love what you're watching so much you can't get off that couch. And that's the definition of what our show is all about. My name is Kevin, and I'm going to be one of your hosts for the special Couch Potato Theater Live. And we are proud to celebrate Wimbledon 2004. And I'd like to introduce my guests, of course, as always, or my co-hosts, my shenaniganers. First, and of course, always is my, brother from another mother, co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network. Please welcome Mr. Kyle Wagner. What's going on, buddy?
Actually, that's Kyle Wagner for you. And just for you're hosting this podcast, I went ahead and put 20 quid down for your opponent just to keep the rhythm right and not mess with fate or anything like that. So
you don't feel bad or guilty,
man. I'm just looking out for you.
Understood. And with us, as always, co-host, of course, with us on the Fandom Podcast Network's Time Warp is the queen of movie food herself, Lacey Adderhall. What's up?
How y'all doing?
Good. How are you? Welcome, by the way. And we're talking a little bit of, tennis here. Kyle, yes, what's up?
I just wanted to tell all the listeners out there, the people watching this on YouTube, might be listening to the audio podcast. I apologize if my inner monologue gets very loud during this podcast.
Kyle has a very loud inner monologue, yes. Well, we are discussing Wimbledon. Came out in 2004, and as of this recording, it is 20 years old. Wimbledon, a great tennis movie. Of course, talking here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Kyle, before we get into other things here, I want to have the Valentine's Day discussion. And look, Lacey, what you got going? You got the Blu-ray and the DVD.
Yeah, when I found out we were going to do this particular movie, I had it on a DVD, but I looked it up on Blu-ray, and there's a commentary on the Blu-ray.
Mm-hmm.
Which
is that the director and Paul Bettany, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's also on the DVD too.
On the DVD.
On the iTunes extras as well.
Oh, right on. Very cool. So I got the update because I just got my 4K and my Blu-ray was looking a little bit grainy. So I updated it so I could watch it, and it really did feel like it was in the stands. Yay. But the commentary was definitely worth the listen. And it also might settle that conversation that y'all are arguing over, whether it's a voiceover or an inner monologue.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that later.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, we're recording this on Valentine's Day. Usually when upcoming holidays come up on the Fandom Podcast Network schedule, we like to do something that's, that kind of fits it. And we did a Christmas movie recently. We'll talk about that in a second. But Kyle, when we were discussing what we were going to do with Valentine's Day, because I think last year we did Deadpool, it just felt right. And we did a Deadpool one. But this was actually your idea. But what's funny, though, you and I have talked about this movie before. It's a personal favorite of ours. But what made you decide to make it, this would be a good one to do on Valentine's Day live culture, or, here on, Couch Potato Theater Live?
Let's rewind. About 3 years ago, we started a Valentine's Day Couch Potato Theater tradition. The first go around was actually kind of an anti-Valentine's thing, Kevin tradition of Cobra, watching it every Valentine's Day. Have you watched it yet today, Kevin?
What's so funny is I have had this Blu-ray out for a few days because I've done this. I've watched Cobra on Valentine's Day for like the last 10 years. More on that later. But yeah.
Awesome.
And then, of course, last year we did the original Deadpool live. And then this year, we were talking about it. Well, let's try to maybe do something with a little romance in it. But we wanted to do a romantic comedy. We didn't want to go out with a full romantic thing. And Kevin and I have both talked about this movie. And the thing about Wimbledon is, yes, it's a little bit of a romantic comedy, but it's just such a fun movie. It's a great performance by Paul Bettany. It has an amazing cast in it, too. But what's so great about this movie and what makes it such a great Valentine's Day movie? Yes, it's got a little bit of the romantic comedy, but this movie in of itself has a ton of heart. I mean, there's more than just the romance between Kirsten Dunst and Paul Bettany's characters. You've got the people who play his Paul Bettany's parents in this film and their relationship. you've got kind of an interesting father-daughter dynamic relationship between Sam Neill and Kirsten Dunst, and even the best friend relationship between Paul Bettany and
Just say Jamie Lannister.
Yeah,
just say
I'm just
Jamie
gonna say
Lannister because
Jamie
I can't
Lannister.
remember how to pronounce his last name.
Nikolai Coster-Waldau.
There, we'll let Lacey do it.
She even does it in the proper accent because she is the queen of movie food. But just felt like something, you know what? It's not super sappy, heavy on Valentine's Day. It's a lot of fun. And I thought, what a great time to actually cover this movie on the Fandom Podcast.
Lacey, your thoughts on Wimbledon and doing this on Valentine's Day? You think it fits?
I think you're right. It does have kind of all of the different possibilities when it comes to relationships. Favreau's character is divorced. Bettany and Kirsten Dunst are in the middle of like that kind of the fresh romance. You've got McAvoy's character who's just like, I mean, for all intents and purposes, let's just call him a hound.
He's a wanker. He's a wanker. He's a wanker.
He's we'll just say playing the field. You've got the parents who are in the middle of potential separation.
Yeah.
You've got his or her parents who I believe he's a widower, right?
No, they split. Her parents just split.
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah. So there is he's divorced. So there's a lot of different kind of possibilities in there. A lot of different relationships to look at.
Yeah, I thought it was a good call, Kyle. This is one of our favorite romantic comedies. It's not like Kyle and I have watched it together, but I would watch it together with you, Kyle, in the same room. So I'm just saying, maybe we can head over to Lacey's.
You to hold the popcorn.
Well, that's fine. We'll head over to Lacey's. We'll just do a whole Wimbledon thing. That'd be great. But yeah, this movie has a lot of charm, and I think it's highly underrated, to be honest with you. It's one of these films that I think that needs to get more on a rotation and be seen out there and talked about, especially now that it's 20 years old. It's hard to believe, but yes, it is. And we'll get into more of that later. Of course, this is the Fandom Podcast Network, and we've got some other fun shows that we recently did on Couch Potato Theater, things that have arrived and that are coming here on FPN. And of course, coming up, we have Couch Potato Theater Rockstar 2001. We'll be doing a crossover with our hair metal podcast on the soundtrack. And then, Kyle, you've got Couch Potato Theater Pacific Rim we're going to be talking about, and the Godzilla -1 and Kaiju Monsterverse discussion is coming too.
Yeah, I'm just that's taking a little longer because I'm a little busy in tax season, but it's also too Kaiju insurance is expensive, and they're really hitting me hard with that for this podcast. So
recently we did Couch Potato Theater Payback. I had, of course, Lacey on as well with my co-host of Blooded Kings, our Highlander podcast on the network, Lee Fillingsness, and we discussed both the director's cut and the theatrical cut. And as I mentioned earlier, we did, of course, our Christmas movie, Couch Potato Theater, celebrating its 20th anniversary at the time as well. Was Couch Potato Theater Live holiday special was Elf, and that was a lot of fun. And of course, just towards the end of last year, we did Couch Potato Theater Demolition Man. And of course, Tombstone, 2 movies that, of course, were also celebrating important anniversaries. But now, Valentine's Day 2024, we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of Wimbledon. Got a little plot description here for you guys. Peter Colt, an English tennis player in his 30s whose ranking slipped from 11th to 119th in the world, considers he never really had to fight for anything as his wealthy but all but close family easily put him through studies and allowed him to pursue his tennis ambitions. Peter bravely exchanges jokes with his German sparring partner, Dieter Prohl, in a similar position, but feels it's about time to admit he's getting too old to compete with the younger competitors and intends, after last Wimbledon, to take a job with a prestigious tennis club instead. Just then, by accident, he bumps into Lizzie Bradbury, the American rising star of female tennis, falls in love with her, and finds her interest in him changes his entire perception, even gives him the strength to win again. But where will it lead them, especially when her overprotective father manager, Dennis Bradbury, proves determined to nip the relationship in the bud, believing it's detrimental to her career? And this film is dedicated to Mark McCormick, the founder of International Management Group, a management firm for high-level athletes who passed away on May 16th, 2003, and many famous tennis players were his clients. Let's start this open discussion here, guys, about Wimbledon. First of all, when and where did you first see this film? What kind of impact did it have on you? Lacey, I want to start with you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let's see. I had just moved back from Los Angeles, so I was living back in Atlanta, and I basically, until I found a new gig, I was basically living at the movie theater because that's what I do. So I saw it at Phipps Plaza. I think I saw it several times, actually. I adore Paul Bettany.
That's the AMC theater, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So it was good. It was fun. I liked it.
That was one of my least favorite theaters. Do you know why?
No. Why?
Because it was very hard to theater switch in it.
You're terrible.
I know I am.
Although the thing is, you just didn't know about the right back hallway.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Because I later worked there, and we always had to get out of the back hallway.
Kyle, when and where did you see this? What was your first experience in Wimbledon?
So, to be honest with you, I didn't see this till it came out on cable. I didn't get a chance to see it in the theaters because it didn't really have that long of a stay in theaters. But I kind of stumbled across it, and I had already been a big fan of Paul Bettany from his performances in A Knight's Tale, obviously as Geoffrey Chaucer. I loved him in Master and Commander, a few other things. And I'm seeing Paul Bettany, and I'm like, okay. And then I see Kirsten Dunst, but it brought me in because of Paul Bettany. I'll be honest with you, because I'm kind of a mixed bag when it comes to Kirsten Dunst. But I really enjoyed this movie, and I enjoyed this movie, like I said, because it's not just about their relationship. I think what they are going through with Paul Bettany's character, Peter Holt, in this movie is actually really well done and kind of reminiscent of some things that have happened to tennis, and then we're going to talk about that later. And it's a fun movie. It's one of those movies you watch and you just feel good while you're watching it. It's not heavy. It's not, oh, it's going to be this tearjerker or anything. You just have fun with it. And again, there were so many people in it at the time who hadn't, outside of Kirsten Dunst, hadn't hit it super big. Bettany was on the rise and people knew Sam Neill, but other than that, everybody was kind of like, they're just kind of some names that were just coming up at the time, but it was just so enjoyable and so much fun. And it instantly just became one of those ones that every time I kind of saw it on cable, I would stop and watch it until I went out and bought it. And it's to me, it's just, I need to turn my brain off. I need to put something that's going to put a smile on my face. And this movie does it every time.
Zazzle's Clubhouse is in the chat there. It says, howdy lads. Welcome to the chat. Thank you for watching Wimbledon. Appreciate you. It's interesting. I at first couldn't quite remember where I saw it until a friend of mine reminded me, and I'll get into that a little bit later when we read the comments that I put on social media, or that the posts that I put in the comments that people put on regarding this film. I'll get into that a little bit more. But it's funny because I'm not a big tennis fan. I remember my grandparents played it, and I remember Wimbledon would come on like every summer, but I'll be honest with you guys, it kind of pissed me off because it would always preempt my soap opera Santa Barbara. And I hated that. I hated when like certain like live shows like that would preempt your programs, and I was so much into Eden and Cruz and Kelly and all these other characters. And then I knew during the summertime, I set my VCR would get screwed and I'd have to wait and, watch some stupid Wimbledon.
I was just going to say, I remember too, Wimbledon also used to have a huge effect on HBO because HBO was the home for a lot of Wimbledon coverage, and like HBO all day long. I want to watch a movie. No, it's Wimbledon all day long.
But I remember seeing it in theater, and then I ended up catching it on. I think it sat with me, but it didn't really sat with me. It wasn't until I started rewatching it that I'm like, okay, I might have saw it on some television somewhere, and then I ended up buying it on DVD, and then I'm like, okay, this is a keeper. For many reasons that we'll get into. And of course, there's a copy of my DVD right there. in the library and such. But I want to kind of talk about the pop culture impact that Wimbledon has. And it's, it's funny, Kyle. I kind of thought about the movie Major League when it comes to sports films. And Lacey, I don't know. I know you're not a big sports ball fan here, but this is, if you look at the movie Major League, it's about the Cleveland Indians who haven't won anything at the time this movie was made. And they make a pennant run and they become very popular with a bunch of scrappy people. And, Charlie Sheen has a character. What's that?
The Wild Thing, Charlie Sheen.
Yes, the Wild Thing. Yes, yes. A pitcher, he needs to hold on, control his fastballs and so on and so forth. Early Wesley. What's that?
Just a bit outside.
Exactly.
Bob Uecker there, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the reason why I'm bringing up that movie is because Cleveland fans love that film. That's kind of like it's up on a pedestal because Cleveland actually wins in that movie. Mm-hmm. And then they go on in the second one to go and do even better. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about Wimbledon is that an Englishman hasn't won Wimbledon in like 60 something years, according to the time frame of this, right, Kyle? Am I getting that right? Because of the comet?
Well, actually in the year 2016, Andy Murray, an Englishman, won Wimbledon.
Okay, so finally it happened, but it was kind of like this joke for a while.
Oh, very much so.
The biggest tournament in professional sports, especially with tennis, Wimbledon, and an English guy can't sniff the victory,
So while we're talking about the tennis, can I bring up something real quick?
Please do.
Tennis in this. So the tennis is fun in this, and obviously it's not top-notch tennis because of the actors, but there is one thing about this that does not ring true as far as Wimbledon goes. When they're playing the quarterfinals and the semifinals in like side courts and not on the grand stage, I'm like, no. They're not playing the quarters and semifinals of Wimbledon over on side courts.
There was
there's some liberties obviously that were brought in. Lacey, you had something?
There was a reason for that. They actually talked about how the court itself, for the main court, is actually smaller as far as like the surrounding. You've got obviously the courts, they're the same size, they're regulation, but only a little bit. So there wasn't enough like side area for them to have like camera crews and stuff. So they had to shoot on the second, like this, the secondary court or whatever, the one where they
the secondary courts.
Quarterfinals.
And before we get too much on a tangent on that, because I still want to make the point I'm trying to make, and we'll get into the location thing later. But yeah, the front entrance to Wimbledon is not the front entrance to Wimbledon, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But the point that I was trying to make was Wimbledon has kind of become this thing to the English, as Major League has become to Clevelanders. It's like this was kind of like if we see an Englishman actually win Wimbledon eventually, this is kind of our romantic way of seeing it, because also then you see the reason why he's inspired, he's falling in love, some crazy characters around it. But we finally got a winner, right, Kyle? And you said 2016?
Yeah, Andy Murray in 2016. And Kevin, I will say this. There is one thing in England that would be bigger than a Englishman winning Wimbledon. And that's if the English soccer team won the World Cup.
World Cup. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
But that just kind of gives you an idea of the scale. It's on a similar scale, but it's not quite that.
Yeah.
But it's close.
This is filmed in and around London and of course Brighton, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But this is a very fun comedy that's filmed in and around London and takes place in and around, of course, one of the biggest tournaments in the world, Wimbledon. And the pop culture impact that it has, I found an article on realviews.net. And it says, love is in tennis doesn't have to be bad, but Richard Loncrane's Wimbledon shows a formulaic motion picture that delights in spite of, or perhaps because of, its reliance upon conventions. Wimbledon is the kind of movie that allows the non-cynical moviegoer to sit back and relax in the presence of actors who work well with each other and a script whose familiarity is an asset. It's rare for any motion picture to successfully combine the cliches of the sports and romance genres while keeping a balance between them. In recent years, I can name only two: For Love of the Game, love that movie, and Cutting Edge to that
Another
select
good one.
group. Yes, Wimbledon can be added. Love of the Game, of course, is my favorite baseball movie, directed by Sam Raimi, and of course, starring Kevin Costner. And The Cutting Edge, the ice skating movie with Maura Tierney and
D.B. Sweeney.
Thank you, D.B. Sweeney. Yes, yes.
Topic.
Yeah. But the one thing I highlighted in this article was the film echoes some real life tennis stories, such as the 70s storybook romance between Jimmy Connors and Chris Evert. It was short-lived, but made big headlines in the tennis world when it was hot. And the incredible ride to the U.S. Open semifinals for a 39-year-old Connors in 1991. Before the tournament, he was ranked 174. I remember that. Anyone wanting to call Wimbledon a fairy tale is within their rights, and it does have a fairy tale quality, but the storyline doesn't venture too far from reality. Your thoughts on that, mirroring a little reality there, guys? Lacey, let's start with you.
Okay, so I don't like sports, but I do love fake sports. So like movie sports, I'm in, right? So any of the
we're talking about real sports, but fake in a movie as in a story.
Right. As in fake characters and all this kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
You know, the program, Friday Night Lights, all that, you know. I don't know enough about the actual stuff happening. Like, I don't know enough about the actual people. I do know that Michael Rosenbaum is great he loves tennis, and so he's interviewed a bunch of them on his podcast, McEnroe and Connors and all that. And those were really fascinating listens, but I don't think that the 1970s was really included in that information, so I don't really have a lot of contributing information for that particular question.
Gotcha. Kyle?
I think they did a phenomenal job of it. I think they got a good balance of it, because it is a hard thing, that especially when you're doing romance, because in most sports movies, and not to go back to Major League as an example, the original romance between Rene Russo and Tom Berenger in Major League really ended up taking a weird back seat and kind of going in a weird direction. This movie just nails that balance. And when you talk about the pop culture impact of it, there's a couple of things. On the sports side of it, the fact that they got John McEnroe and Chris Evert to come in and be the quote unquote commentators for Wimbledon really did add a great, okay, we're taking this seriously for the tennis people and enjoying that. But then you also add into the fact, I think there's a later pop culture element that a lot of people come back to with this, when you consider how much Paul Bettany has blown up since this film. Kirsten Dunst, Jon Favreau, Sam Neill, James McAvoy. There's so many people in this movie that have gone to another level, and a lot of people go back to, of course, and Jamie Lannister. But they come back to this movie and seeing them in these early roles, I think, is a lot of fun for a lot of people. And again, Kevin, like you said in the article, this is a great cast that meshes so damn well.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's I do love movies about sports, especially when there's romance involved and such like this. And you know, like I said, I'm not a big tennis guy, but I love the world around it. I love the culture. And Lacey, I did listen to most of the audio commentary on this movie, and I loved how they talked about, you know, you have to dress a certain way when you're in Wimbledon. There's certain cultural things that you have to do, and it's grass fields as well. Did you listen to the whole commentary?
Yes. Now that commentary is a bit dated because of Andre Agassi. I remember because my parents were big into tennis, like, and shout out to their 30th anniversary yesterday. Yay. But they were huge into tennis. So as a kid, you know, on Saturdays and Sundays, you know, I was sitting on the bleachers while they did all their round robins and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I really know the general stuff about, I mean, I don't know all the professional stuff, but I mean, I can watch a tennis game and follow it and know what's going on, which is not something I can say for most sports. So when Andre Agassi starts coming with like, I remember the first time he had like the blue and teal kind of like,
Mhm.
it was like this kind of fake lightning bolt thing on the and they fined him and told him he had to, if he wasn't going to change, that he was going to be docked a certain number of points or something like that. I don't know how that works, the rankings or something. And I remember it becoming like a huge deal because before that it was all dress whites. That's it. You know, you had your tennis whites and that's what you wore. The only color you could have was like a stripe on your tennis shoe. That's it. You know, you could even your sweatbands were white. So I remember that being huge. And now with like Venus and Serena and Steffi Graf and like, you know, everybody kind of followed suit, and now they've got their like they've got their, you know, fashion lines with all the different crazy tennis outfits and stuff.
I remember when I listened to the first half of the commentary, and I remember there was stuff they were saying where like I could tell this is recorded in, you know, 2000
like how
or whatever,
commenting on how James McAvoy is going to do really well for himself one day. He's just he's just a talented young lad, and I'm like,
but hearing him also talk about Paul Bettany talking about Jon Favreau in a way that he'll probably talk more about as if you were interviewing him today, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But was there anything else in the commentary that jumped out at you? I always like to give you a minute on the commentary.
The commentary was pretty cool. They talked about, like I was telling you earlier, about the difference with the sizes of the courts and how that affected filming. There was a lot of interesting, if you're into like learning about direction, there's a lot of interesting information from the director talking about, you know, how he chose to shoot things this and that way, and why they chose to do you know, not do live balls. There were very few actual tennis balls other than the ones that they show in their hands. Everything else was just faking, mimic, back and forth. Lots of really good and interesting information if you're interested in actual director commentary. Paul Bettany as well, really fun. I loved how they discussed the concept of the inner monologue and a voiceover, not really choosing one, because part of it is preamble and part of it's in the moment.
Right.
That's the difference between.
Yeah.
And so they called it Radiohead.
Yeah.
It's just this kind of like jumble of, it can be kind of anywhere in the movie, which I kind of thought was interesting, because the other day when we were prepping for this, y'all had asked me whether I thought it was a voiceover or an inner monologue, and I was like, you know what, guys, it's been too long. I haven't seen it. I need to go back and listen. And of course, by the time I got to the end of the movie, I was like, well, it's both.
Yeah. No, you're right. And it's well, I wanted to mention when the director talks about, there's that really cool scene of them setting up all those cameras in that row and that arc about how they're getting the shot of the ball doing its thing, and some very if you really look at the way the camera moves in certain scenes, it's quite fascinating.
That reminiscent of The Matrix and Bullet. Yeah. Like it really was. I mean, for
it's not bullet time; it is tennis ball time,
right? It really was. And a lot of it was. There was another interesting thing that he did where he would take like consecutive photos all the way around the crowd, and then each photo would be multi processed, so that you'd have the same shot over and over again,
right?
So that gave that kind of the wavy feeling. It was really interesting the way he described, and of course I'm just butchering trying to explain, but that was really interesting.
Well, that's cool. I mean, it's definitely worth listening to if you want to watch the movie again and get a different perspective. I got some production notes here. As I mentioned, the film is dedicated to Mark McCormick, the founder of the International Management Group, a management firm for high-level athletes. He passed away in May of 2003, and of course, the movie came out in September of 2004. But Chris Everett, I believe, was a client, and he's represented many, many, many more. And so obviously he was a loved person. And some of the scenes that were filmed during the 2003 championship matches, it is the only time in history of the tournament that has been allowed, that this has been allowed. And some court scenes with Bettany were filmed at the Stoke Park Country Club, home of the Boodles Challenge. And I'll show you a picture later, but the London Zoo's entrance was used for the entrance to Wimbledon. When they talk about that in the commentary, they kind of go, yeah, there really isn't like a grand entrance. We needed something that looked cool. So they went to the zoo, which I thought was kind of funny. And I'll show a picture of that later. Yeah. And I'm going to bring up Brighton. Of course, that's where that's where his family was living. And of course, where he had his flat. And the film used locally recruited Wimbledon residents as extras for the scenes. And I thought this was interesting. Kirsten, by the way, it's pronounced Kirsten, not Kristen. And I keep getting that wrong. I double checked, and I also looked on IMDb, and under her stuff, it's Kirsten Dunst, was interviewed with regard to this film. She was under contract with Harvey Weinstein at Miramax and had to complete the contract. She agreed to do the film, provided she could select her co-star. She selected Paul Bettany. There you go. The other, yeah, Kyle?
I'm just going to say, that tells you how big she was at the time. Because she was coming off Spider-Man and how much power she was, to actually be able to pull that kind of power on Harvey Weinstein at that time frame.
Yes, and it's funny too because it's not her story. It's Peter Colt's story, which is interesting. Yeah. So it's not. She's kind of like a co-star basically in it. So yeah.
But she was the selling point of the movie without a doubt. At the time.
The actor served with real tennis balls, and all others were added digitally to make it appear like they were playing. But I went on to social media on Facebook and I asked people to get their thoughts and comments and kind of see who else out there had seen this film and what their thoughts were. And so I got some comments here from friends of ours. My friend Spencer Javis said underrated. Chris Tooliger said I liked it. And this is where I remembered where I finally saw it, because it took my friend Charles Hickey, who I used to work with in Virginia for Decipher Incorporated, the game company. And he says, pretty sure we saw this as part of a Reitzel planned movie marathon at the MacArthur Theater Center. We both enjoyed it, and even on a rewatch during the pandemic, Paul Bettany's presence is just great. And Jamie Lannister is his best mate. So, yeah, hold on a sec, Kyle. So the office that we all used to work at in downtown Norfolk, they built this brand new like super mall center 2 blocks away that we could go to during lunch. We ended up going to like TGI Fridays in there, but there was a Metroplex theater in there. And I would often organize these mini marathons by going to pay for one movie and then sneaking into a bunch of other ones. And Wimbledon was part of that. So Charles Hickey reminded me of that. Yeah, Kyle.
Since Charles mentioned Jamie Lannister, there's also this, we were robbed of an all-time tennis career of Jamie Lannister because of the events of Game of Thrones. Because, the whole hand thing really became an issue.
Yeah, when you lose a hand, you can't play tennis that well. It's true. We got some other comments here. My friend Terry said, good flick. My good friend Rita Trainer McDermott said, we love it too. Still in our dwindling DVD collection. And just so you guys know, I've known Rita for a very long time, and Bob, her husband, I've been doing football stuff with him for a while. Kyle, he's been, Bob in our fantasy football thing, Bob McDermott. And I said, I have not seen your DVD collection. It's not like prominently out there. She says, oh, it's pretty small. It's in drawers and cabinets. So I got to go check that out next time. Maybe I can rate it. We'll see. Dan Bauman said, I liked it. Jennifer said, yay. Steve Ball said he enjoyed it. My friend Chris Gagolin said, guilty pleasure for sure. And when I would get home from work at the restaurant in 2008, it was often on USA or TBS at 1 a.m. Kyle, I think that's where I remembered rewatching it at times, on these like channels that had commercials, So yeah. Now this is interesting. I want to get your thoughts on this comment here that Glenn Stein said. He says, it would have been better if they had cast actors who knew how to play tennis. At the time, I was thinking Shannon Elizabeth and Hugh Grant. Not only would it have looked better, but they could have promoted the sport when they were promoting the film. Now, guys, I get getting people to know how to play the sport, but my only argument against Glenn here, and I think that's a good suggestion, especially at the time with those two, because those two were really hot and popular at the time. You can't mess with chemistry. If you get these two people working together, and it looks like they got chemistry, you can work around everything else. Kyle, what do you think of that?
He has a point, but I completely agree with you, and I think this is a good time to bring this up too, because the other thing with that is he mentioned Sharon Elizabeth and Hugh Grant. They're too beautiful for this film. They are both literally too beautiful. Kirsten Dunst is very attractive, and Paul Bettany is an attractive man, but there's something, especially with Bettany, and it's something they pull off very well. Even though he's supposed to be from this rich family and this tennis player, there's something about Bettany in this film that we just identify with. Like he's got, like we can sympathize with him, like with what he's going through and him trying to woo Kirsten Dunst and what's going on with that relationship. I think if you get Hugh Grant and Shannon Elizabeth, there's no empathy for them in these roles.
I wanted to ask you about this, Lacey, because I was just thinking too. I don't know if they would have been able to have gotten Hugh Grant because he was playing the prime minister in a Christmas film.
Fair. Also, he would have been 43 at the time, which is like geriatric in tennis terms. Like they would have had to I mean, if they had done it 15 years earlier, not to say
Jimmy Connors is going, wait. Well, you're right.
In this film, I mean, Paul Bettany, his character plays a 30-year-old man who is he's 31 in the movie, right? So he's saying, and he's talking about how 31 is just long in the tooth for tennis. You know, people who play tennis, you know, who are ranked that high, they by the time they're 33, they're usually out, and they're taking gigs to do, you know, commentary, that kind of thing, or coaching, that kind of stuff. So I don't think Hugh Grant could have done it at the time. It would not have worked for the story. They would have had to change the story to like a former tennis or something, because it would not have been believable for a 42-year-old man to be pulling the wild card for Wimbledon.
Right.
Also, there are plenty of actors who like know how to play tennis, but playing tennis, anyone playing tennis at a Wimbledon level, you're gonna need an actual like professional player.
Well, they had enough experts on hand to coach these
and
people
they had like 3 months of tennis training. They were taught how to, like, one of the things that Bettany talks about on the commentary, and he named the guy like 17 times, and I can't remember what his name is because I'm an idiot. But the tennis coach that they had apparently is like the best.
It was Pat Cash.
Thank you,
Yep.
Cash. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Because he talked about all the different drills and everything else, and how they, you know, would stop shots, and he'd come in and like just tweak them just the tiniest bit to you know, show how you're supposed to do it, so that it would be believable.
Yeah. Well, you know, it would have been interesting, but you just cannot deny the chemistry between these two, and I know we're going to touch on that a little bit more. But yeah, it's I think, yep.
There's a big difference between a 10-year age gap and a 15-year age gap.
This is true. Very true.
Elizabeth and Hugh Grant are, I think, 14 years apart. Paul and Kirsten are like 10.
Speaking of chemistry, as we get on with the comments here, Nathaniel White says, I honestly really enjoyed it. Bettany and Dunst have a playful chemistry that jumps off the screen. Supporting cast is absolutely stellar, with Jon Favreau as Bettany's money-grubbing agent, James McAvoy as Bettany's younger brother, and Sam Neill as Dunst's overprotective father. Overall, it was a fun, underrated movie that I enjoy watching whenever have seen it on. And my friend Ryan Christopher says, that's a fun one. An early James McAvoy film, typical happy ending rom-com of the late 90s, early 2000s, probably why I enjoyed it. I kind of get the feeling too, guys. I think this is worth a short conversation because I just, you know, there's not a lot of rom-coms that have like kind of come out recently that have had certain long theater runs, or have kind of planted a flag is like, that's a big money maker. Let's make more of those. It seems like we really got a lot through the 80s and the 90s and early 2000s. And this is definitely one of them that did quite well. That, yes, it's a formula. We know they're going to end up together. It's, you know, it feels like another version of these rom-coms that just really hit a certain place with our nostalgia as well. Wouldn't you say, Kyle?
I agree. And again, I think what it comes down to with this too is it really is about the chemistry. And if you don't have the chemistry that there's just something with that chemistry of Paul Bettany and Kirsten Dunst where they're very playful and flirty with each other, but you end up rooting for them. And that's always one of the biggest aspects of a romantic comedy. If you can't buy into the romance, you're not going to buy into the movie. And you buy into this romance here, and I think you buy into it because it's not quite traditional either. There are two people who understand the world they live in, and they really aren't necessarily looking for connections, and yet they have managed to find this amazing connection between them, despite everything with them. But it goes through some of the ups and downs that are caused by having a relationship in this environment, and how distracting a relationship can be. And on one hand, for one of them, it's a source of inspiration and getting them to play better, and for the other one, it turns into a distraction and something that affects them greatly. And how they even deal with that in those moments is really well done. And it's just
Yeah.
that's what's the relationship sells this movie as well as the comedy aspect of it.
That's
a good point.
More of a this is a rom-com more than a sports film.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
very much so.
Just because if
Definitely.
it was a sports film, Lizzie would have gone on to win the female title, and he would have, like, they both, it wouldn't be her, heading home, towards the end. So
Yeah.
Oh, spoilers. Sorry.
Well, thanks everyone for putting their posts there on Facebook. We appreciate it. But let's get into the cast here, guys. I did want to mention the director, Richard Long Crane. I was kind of curious about the stuff that he's done. He's done a lot of British productions, including, I think, an episode or two of Band of Brothers. But I just realized that he directed one of my wife's favorite horror films of all time, and I didn't really know anything about it. The 1977 movie called The Haunting of Julia. And that stars Mia Farrow, and it's all filmed in and around London. And what's interesting, and this is going to come up again later in this podcast, but my wife and I just spent time in London in 2023 September, and you know how we love to go visit filming locations. Well, she wanted to visit the house that was used, and we found it, and we took some pictures in front of it. But yeah, he directed that. And he was also really good on that audio commentary, as we mentioned here, guys. But let's talk about the rest of the cast here, guys. Of course, we have Paul Bettany, Kirsten Dunst, Sam Neill as the father, Jon Favreau as Ron Roth, Bernard Hill from our Lord of the Rings fans as the father Edward Colt, Eleanor Braun as Augusta Colt, the mom, Nikolai Coster-Waldau. Is that how you say it, Lacey?
It depends on where you're from, but sure.
Jamie Lannister
Yeah.
as his German practice partner. Austin Nichols is the jerk, Jake Hammond. And we can go on here, of course, James McAvoy. And then we get, of course, commentators John McEnroe and Chris Everett playing themselves. Kyle, I want to get your thoughts on the cast overall, but I do want to just say, let's save the discussion for Favreau and Paul Bettany after this, because I want to get into that a little bit more.
Well, again, it's phenomenal cast, and like I said earlier, I'm not a huge fan of Kirsten Dunst per se. There's times where she kind of annoys me, but in this one, she's great.
Hold on. You can't just throw that out and say why. Was there a movie that just made you irk? I got to know this, because this is new between you and me right now. I know you pretty darn well, but I didn't know that Kirsten Dunst annoyed you from time to time. Tell me when she's annoyed you.
I'm gonna be honest with you, and I know people are gonna say this is sacrilege. I thought she was not that great in the Spider-Man film, Sam Raimi Spider-Man films.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did not care for her as Mary Jane Watson in those films. I actually thought Bryce Dallas Howard was a better MJ when she played Gwen Stacy than she was. And then
was there any other films that were non-Spider-Man-y that you didn't care for either?
I was kind of mixed with her performance. Interview with the Vampire. I know a lot of people love that one. I think too, she got overhyped really quick between that Interview with the Vampire and her performance on ER back in the day, when she was kind of like the kid that Clooney was trying to rescue. And I think she got a little overhyped. But I liked her in this one because she was fallible in this film, and two, I think it was the type of character she's very good at when she's doing right, where the character has some confidence, but you see her flaws, and she actually kind of comes across a little bit in this like the all-American girl. And again, it's also, I think, just working with Paul Bettany, and the two of them just had amazing chemistry. and that you buy into that chemistry. And I think that helps sell her for me on this film. But there's a couple people in this movie that I think absolutely steal it. And one of them is James McAvoy. James McAvoy is gold in this film. He's great as the gambling addicted brother who doesn't believe in his brother's abilities. He's always constantly spilling stuff to the parents and working angles, and he's the one who sells the photo of the two of them together to the media. I mean, he's just so good in this. And you talk about the commentary, and you said it before. The commentary is, oh, this McAvoy kid's going to be something special in a few years and stuff like that. And of course, I know we're going to talk about Favreau later, but this is classic Jon Favreau right here. This is classic Favreau in this role. And Kevin, I've got to do a little bit of shout out to Celia Ermy, Penny Ryder, and Annabelle Levinson, and Amanda Walker as the three old ladies from the tennis club, because they steal the scene.
Hold on. Do you mean the three old cougars?
Yes, exactly. They so steal the scenes that they are in, and it's wonderful. But again, look at this.
They are tennis enthusiasts.
Lacey,
tennis enthusiasts
Lacey,
of a certain age.
What is your thoughts on the cast?
Well, the cast. First of all, I love Kirsten Dunst. I think she's been in some really amazing things. I didn't really because I didn't come to the table for Interview with a Vampire. I didn't see that until like much later, because I'm not really a horror movie person, and someone had to convince me that it was not as horror-ish as whatever. I think that when it comes to movies like Bring It On and Dick, she was absolutely hilarious in Dick. Get Over It is one of my favorite teen.
Oh, I love Get Over It. Oh, right? My God, that's so good. Yes.
Fantastic. I think she's very fun, and I think she's really good at what she does. I despised her in Marie Antoinette, but on purpose. Like she plays this she's just really good at what she does. The only movies that I don't like her in are the super, super dramatic movies, but that's because I don't like dramatic movies, so I don't see them. So it's not that I don't like her. I just don't like the choice that she made to be in that movie. You know what I mean? So wasn't she in Virgin Suicides and Melancholia? Like that kind of stuff is just not my jam. That's not my bucket of wax. I'm not a bucket of wax. I don't know where that came from. Yeah. So between her and I love Austin Nichols. Matter of fact, I think he's the only person in the entire cast who actually played tennis prior to this. I think he's great. He's gone on to do a ton of things, Walking Dead and all these other, he was in the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. He was one of the boys in the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. I think everyone in this, I know we're going to talk about Favreau and Bettany later, but you're representing Lord of the Rings, Jurassic Park, Professor X, Game of Thrones. Like every major, like every person in this went on to do like major, huge things, that's a talent for casting, which is why I'm so excited. Well, I think that casting is very important. So we'll just leave it at that.
I thought the chemistry between our two main stars here, Kirsten and Paul, were just phenomenal. And right when they meet, in the hotel room incident here, and I got to bring this up right here, Kyle. This look here that Kirsten Dunst does, and as he's walking out, how freaking adorable is that look when she's like just out of the shower? He's making a fool of himself, and he says something about nice body, and he's putting his foot in his mouth, and how charming she thinks all this is, and she is falling hard for him right now. This here is probably my favorite Kirsten Dunst performance, next to probably Bring It On.
I want to add to that. What makes that even better is later on in the film when she admits she actually knew who he was.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. It's what's that?
The last shot of her when they're having sushi at the little sushi bar, The last shot of her where it's what you're talking about, when she admits that she knew who he was and she'd watched the game that he had fallen, had choked or whatever. That last shot of her face is just adorable.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's go ahead and let's have the Jon Favreau and Paul Bettany discussion here, guys. So this if you could kind of say that this helped shape the Marvel MCU, so to speak. And Kyle, I'm going to let you go on this a little bit here, but this obviously is where the relationship between Paul Bettany and otherwise known as AI Jarvis for Tony Stark, and then of course Vision as he came on later on, and in the first Iron Man, of course, the director was Jon Favreau. These guys were friends, and John gave a call to Paul Bettany saying, "I think I've got a great part for you here," and he thought of him about this voice. And what I remember, Kyle, about this interview, because I think this came up while he was doing some press for WandaVision, Paul Bettany was talking about how, he'd made some money acting, but he made like a god-awful amount for the amount of time he spent voicing Jarvis for a couple of hours. He made like over $100,000 for the first film, and then like $200,000 for the second, and it just went up from there. And then, of course, then he became Vision. But this is where that relationship started, was this production of this little rom-com that came out in 2004, Kyle.
Yeah, Jon Favreau was insisting Paul Bettany be Jarvis. That was kind of like one of his first things. And it's even kind of funny because I remember, too, in other interviews Bettany did, he's like, after he was done voicing Jarvis, he thought he was done with the MCU. And he's like, his career had kind of petered out. And then they called him back and said, "So, yeah, we're not done with you yet."
How do you feel about
I think there was like I think he was out waiting outside an office, and he got a phone call or something. And
yeah, he literally was about ready to retire from acting because he wasn't getting roles. And the amazing thing about Paul Bettany too is I think now he gets a lot of credit, but he's such a versatile actor. You see him in how he is in this. You see him how he was in the movie Master and Commander. And then of course, him as Chaucer in Knight's Tale. He is that's maybe my favorite role of his.
Yeah.
Ever. It's close between this and Chaucer. I'm going to be honest with you. These are probably, those are my two favorite roles of his. But the great thing about him in this film, Kevin, is I think for us as guys, even though he has all this money and stuff, he's identifiable. We can relate with him and what he's going through. And I think that makes it work so much more with this film.
Also, Paul Bettany's wife, Jennifer Connelly, you said was the voice of someone else, Kyle.
Yeah, she was the voice of Peter Parker's AI Friday in Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm just gonna say Paul Bettany's living the good life, man.
Yeah,
he's living the good life.
Lacey, your thoughts?
With Paul Bettany, if you have never seen the movie Gangster #1,
I need to see that. It's been way too long.
It is so against type for him.
Yeah.
And he is like genuinely, like, he gives good creepy. Like, he gives good mob boss. Like, he's like, it's good. It's I'll say nothing else about it, but if you haven't seen Gangster #1, check it out.
He's channeling a little bit of that in Solo too.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that, Kyle. I love him in Solo. So I just wanted to bring that up because that was kind of a start of a beautiful relationship, of course, that pleased MCU fans, obviously. I did want to mention real quick, Mr. Jamie Lannister himself, Nikolai. Of course, that is his most iconic role. But I got to shout out a movie I just saw for the first time recently. It came out in 2017 that Nikolai starred in, called Shot Caller. Have you guys heard of this film?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen it, Lacey?
Yeah, I got it.
Of course.
Wait, Kevin. Everybody take a drink now because that's the new Fandom Podcast Network drinking game.
Just so you know, he plays a guy in a nice, normal guy in a relationship, and he gets in a car accident that he's responsible for. He kills his best friend by accident in the car. He has to go to jail, and it's a scary tale of how jail doesn't really help anyone change. and he accepts for the worst, and he becomes like a prison guy that is a shot caller. And then finally he gets out of jail for a short amount of time, and he has to commit this robbery, and he is not the person he was when he went in, and he is badass. Anyway, I highly recommend Shot Caller. But yeah, you've seen it obviously, Lacey. Did you like it? I assume, since you have a copy of it.
Yeah, it was definitely not what I was expecting because I went into it kind of blind or whatever. Very good, very fun. I would say that the other time he and Paul Bettany have worked together was in a movie called Firewall. Do you remember that with Harrison Ford, right?
Yes, he was Paul Bettany was the bad guy in that.
Yeah, with Harrison Ford. Yeah, with the passwords and stuff.
And who else was in that? I'm sorry, was Nicola
and Paul Bettany.
Yeah.
Paul
Okay,
Bettany
gotcha.
Osvaldo, yeah. So that was kind of interesting.
Interesting. I forgot about that.
Little web that we weave, yeah.
Well, I just thought we should look at Kirsten here again. I mean, it's kind of.
Well, she's adorable. And I love the fact that she and her husband met on set, and they've been married for. They're just the most adorable, like ridiculously adorable couple.
Jesse Plemons. Otherwise, my wife calls him Faux Damon because he looks like
when you can't get Matt Damon.
Yeah.
I never would have pegged that. He was like my favorite part of Friday Night Lights.
And they're both co-starring in a movie coming out that's kind of scary called Civil War. They're both in that film together. So
if you want something fun one of the Jesse Plemons, my favorite Jesse Plemons things is the episode of Black Mirror he did.
Black Mirror, the McAllister episode, right?
Yeah, the McAllister USS McAllister episode. Yeah.
More famous, most people know him from his part in Breaking Bad, of course. Yeah. So,
and
but I really liked him in Game Night.
Game Night was fantastic, yes. But Friday Night Lights was kind of his original, like that was his kind of coming up. And in Battleship, his character was like instrumental, number one, but also hilarious.
Well, we've got Mrs. Jesse Plemons here. They've been married for a while now, so yeah. Just a little bit of release date information. It was released September 17th, 2004, running time of 1 hour and 38 minutes, budget around $31 million, grossed only about $41 million. So it didn't make a lot of money, but I think it did a lot better, of course, on video sales and, of course, on the couch potato theaters that people were watching this on. I got some critical reception here, guys. Wimbledon received mixed reviews, holding a score of 61% on Rotten Tomatoes with an average of 5.9 out of 10. The consensus reads, quote, a predictable, bland rom-com, but Bettany proves to be an appealing lead. That is incorrect. Take that back, Rotten Tomatoes. And
awful.
I always like to give Roger Ebert a shout out. He gave the film a positive review. Quote, Wimbledon is well-behaved movie about nice people who have good things happen to them. That's kind of startling in a world where movie characters, especially in sports movies, occupy the edge of human experience. What a surprise to hear conversation instead of dialogue and to realize that the villain may actually be right some of the time. He gave the film 3 out of 4 stars. So that's good for him. That's a good, I wonder why he never did 5 stars. He always did 4. That always kind of messed me up. Should be 5 stars.
He did it just to mess you up.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, come on. Letterboxd uses 5 stars. So there you go. Stephen Holden in the New York Times wrote that Wimbledon was much more conventional than Locrine's previous films, but with clever than average dialogue and sharply drawn subsidiary characters. I would agree with that. And Michael Charlotte's review for Empire, which is an English magazine, gave the film 3 out of 5 stars. See, he uses 5 stars, saying in tennis parlance, this fires off more moonballs to stay in play than outright winning shots. But Bettany is charming, and thankfully he and Dunst are appealing together. So he kind of gives it a jab, but then kind of gives it a hug, I guess. So,
I'm sorry. Does anyone know what a moonball is?
I think it's like when you don't throw it all the way, it just kind of flops in front of you, I guess. I think that's what a moonball is.
Played and watched tennis for 20 years. Never heard of a moonball, but okay.
Yeah, I don't either. So, guys, let me ask you. We've talked about the roles a little bit, but do you have any favorite characters in Wimbledon in 2004? Like, if you had to pick your favorite character, what would that be, Lacey?
McEnroe.
McEnroe? Yeah, doing the commentator?
McEnroe he's awesome. But as far as like the actors, I would say it's going to be James McAvoy. Like he's just
Nice.
He just steals. I mean, the thing with the bicycle and just not being capable of riding the
Can
bicycle.
we talk about the fact that he's practicing riding his bike in the house while watching porn?
Yep. The director's cut, like there's what? And then on top of everything else, every time, because apparently the bicycle that he used was one of those ones where they clip the foot in, right? Yeah. And apparently he just couldn't do it. And so that was real. Like he couldn't, he kept like every time he tried to like hopping after the bike, trying to get his foot out of the thing. And then apparently the director would be laying on the ground ready to like hold the wheel so that he could get off the bike, and then he would like wait 10 seconds and then like let the bike drop. Just sort of this kind of running gag.
Kyle, what about you?
Obviously, Paul Bettany is one of my favorite things of this movie, but I gotta agree with Lacey. James McAvoy steals every scene he's in this movie. In fact, Kevin, you're gonna need to change the sheets after the podcast.
The dude basically squats in his Brighton apartment, thinking he's not going to be home, and he's kind of holding a party orgy in it. Come on.
But you know what? I do have to give a quick shout out. I love Peter Holt's dad.
Yeah.
You love him because he loves his son so much. But I love that when he's first moving into the tree house or whatever that is, he's sweeping
Bernard Hill,
Peter.
Edward Colt. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Peter, remember everything I told you about tennis? It's all bullocks.
Yeah. The leader of the Rohirrim. Lacey, did you have a comment? I'm sorry,
I did, and I've lost it. I have no idea what I was going to say.
No worries. I really like that Sam Neill came in, played the overprotective father. This guy's like an A+ star at this time, and I thought he was great. And one of the little scenes that I like is when Peter Colt is in the finals. And he's in the airport, or was it the plane? And he's like kind of cheering for him, you know. I love that scene. I thought that was really good. And Jon Favreau, boom, comes in. And what's so funny is he's so right. He's like, you now matter, which means now I can market you. That's how this works. Mm-hmm. I didn't abandon you. You just sucked, and there was nothing to promote.
Can I just throw out another scene with Sam Neill that I thought was really poignant in this film? It's right after Lizzie kind of breaks up with Peter because she's so upset she lost. And as he's walking out, you see Sam Neill watching film of his daughter, and he makes this comment about what she was doing. And it's like that in that moment, you see Sam Neill's that character's whole mindset about Peter change.
Yeah.
Right in that moment. And it was just a really fun, interesting, and standout moment in the film.
There's another character that I really liked in this film, and that was Jonathan Timmons, who played the ball boy. I like the fact that he stuck with him, and he says, "Good luck, Mr. Colt," and Colt was kind of looking after him. And then you have the Darth Vader villain of Jake Hammond hitting the boy with the ball and there's that whole scene that, and is he going to come back? And I love that whole scene. So yeah.
And don't forget, he really does. He does evil bastard really well.
Yeah, yeah.
Austin Butler. I mean, he's kind of known for playing, the sweetheart on One Tree Hill, and he plays the kind of.
You mean Austin Nichols, not Butler?
Yeah. What did I say? Oh, did I just Elvis on this? No.
Yes, you.
Sorry, Austin Nichols. With the Walking Dead and all that. But he's very versatile, and I think that he's going to end up, if people will give him the chance to play some more out there roles, I think he could really if you haven't seen John from Cincinnati, it's one of the weirdest. It feels like David Lynch took something and then wrote for a little while and then put it through a paper shredder and then handed it to somebody else, and then they got Jim Beaver, Austin Nichols, and Al Bundy to play, and it's absolutely the weirdest thing ever. But he is so good playing this, maybe alien or maybe not. You don't know anything. It's the weirdest thing ever. He's the title character.
Take for it. Yeah, I have not seen that show, so okay. Yeah. Okay, guys. I just want to give you a moment. What other favorite moments or scenes did you have in this film? Give me one or two quickly, Kyle.
The scene where Peter is hitting the cans and he's practicing, and she goes, if you hit this one, I'll sleep with you. He ends up hitting the coach. Another great one is that scene where it's him and his brother and his parents, and he goes, "You're just a bloody wanker." Fair, and Maxwell goes, "Harsh but fair." Just the way he delivers.
Okay, you're bleeding into quotes now, Kyle.
But the other one, my other favorite one.
Kyle, I was asking you for scenes, not quotes, just so you know.
Well, I know, but they're great scenes too. But one of my other favorite scenes is when he breaks into the apartment complex they're in.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one. Yeah. Lacey, what are some of your favorite scenes or moments?
There's a scene where the three guys are asleep and Paul Bettany has to get up and he has to climb over Favreau to do it. And in the moment, Favreau pretends that he's sleeping and he mumbles the name Jennifer on purpose. It was not scripted. It was on purpose because that's Paul Bettany's wife's name.
Yes.
He did it to try and stump him. And I think that it's funny in itself, but when you hear the story behind it, it gets funnier. And I think that's absolutely adorable. And then, just anytime I do love the scene where somebody, the shop owner kind of looks at McAvoy like, wow, you really don't trust you don't have any faith in your brother at all. And the whole thing is he's just playing the odds. He says something like, it's a double win. It's a win either way. If he loses, I win, I get rich. And if he wins, I get laid. He's just kind of this out to have fun kind of guy. There's no deliberate, issue between him and his brother. He just plays the odds, and it's just he's just such a light and wacky character, and I think he's hilarious.
The moments I enjoyed the most are the scenes with Peter and Lizzie. I especially when they first meet in the hotel room. But I like when she wants to escape and they go to Brighton, his hometown, and you can tell she's wearing his clothes when they're out jogging, and because she only brought one thing. And it's funny too because as you mentioned, Lacey, that his brother's the one that leaked the photo, and the father comes to basically claim her. And I like how they have that conversation. She's hiding but listening to what there's. Yeah, she's kind of going around the pillar. I love that scene. I think that's really good. And then she presents herself that she's there. But that scene reminded me a little bit because the paparazzi are there, kind of in whatchamacallit, the one with Hugh Grant and
Notting Hill.
Notting Hill, when she's at his apartment and the paparazzi show up at his, the blue door, which I've been to actually. But yeah, those are some of my favorite scenes.
I just want to add in, you talk about that scene, Kevin. I love the going into that scene where they're watching the TV and it's like, well, that looks like the door to my flat.
Yes. And I just want to give a shout out to Peter Colt's car, the Porsche. They called it I think it was called a Chelsea something, a Chelsea thing or whatever, but just a great car. So
but Kyle, Dylan McKay flashbacks.
Yeah, I know, right? Dylan McKay flashbacks, yes.
And to be fair, those weren't actually real. Those were kit cars. Nothing about those were actual Porsche vehicles.
Go ahead and just destroy my dreams there, Lacey.
What I'm telling you is that you could buy the kit and pay far less money.
We know. Yeah, it's a movie trick, but it still looks freaking cool. It's awesome. Mm-hmm. Kyle, you jumped into some of your favorite quotes there. Was there any other quotes that you want to jump out? And Lacey, I'm going to let you go as well.
Again, I just love that you really are a wanker, harsh, but true, but fair.
The way McAvoy says that retort is hilarious. I love that.
I also, one of my other favorite quotes is when he talks about going into the wrong bedroom. He's like, well, your dad was a quick shag.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites too. Lacey, did you have any favorite quotes?
I think the thing where he says, well, my parents were still together, which proves that love isn't just blind, but it's bloody stupid.
Yeah.
That's really fun. And then I do love the if you get this, I'll sleep with you. And he just like blows it.
You know, the
yeah.
line that I never get tired of, and I think it was in the trailer as well, is when the members of the tennis club, oh, look, there's Peter Colt, the new pro, once ranked 17th in the world. He goes, 11th! Once ranked 11th in the world.
And then somebody else says, oh, well, wait, once ranked 13th in the world.
And I love the little back and forth. And it really kind of defines the relationship between Peter and Jamie Lannister's character. Dieter says, I suppose in a few thousand years, he says, Dieter, the English will evolve webbed feet because of the rain. Peter calls, yes, just about the same time the German evolves his first sense of humor. Dieter says, no, that's unfair. Many times I make you laugh. Peter Cole goes, no, I'm laughing at you, not with you. It's always kind of good. And I love it when in a romantic comedy, when you have the two leads, yeah, you're always wondering like who's going to say I love you first. And I love it when it's creative. And I love the fact that Peter and Lizzie are talking and Peter hesitates. He says, as a matter of fact, I was incredibly easy. Lizzie Bradley says, I said I love you. Peter Cole says, see, that's very good news. I thought I was alone in that department. Lizzie says, well, it turns out you've got company. Oh, come on, it's so cute. I love that.
But I also love that the times where you see a romantic comedy and no one has said it yet, but it gets dropped into something else, you know, because she says, you know, don't tell me I love you, tell everybody else. And he was like, I'm sorry, could you say that again? Wait, what now? Like you said that. Wait, we need to go. Could you roll back a little bit? Yeah.
So I don't know if I made this obvious, but we always have a section here that says, who's your movie crush? And I'm just going to put that picture up of Lizzie there in the shower. That's just, I mean, even the director and the director's commentary was talking about this look. And this is what makes her character and Kirsten Dunst just like adorable. And she always had this type of thing going on in several films. I remember Get Over It, the movie that you and I like. Lacey, there's several scenes like that within here. But Lacey, I want to ask you, who's your crush in this film?
Oh, you know, I would probably go with Austin Nichols. Although,
really, the bad boy tennis that likes to hit kids with tennis balls, huh?
Yeah. Now, in the movie, you know, don't get me wrong, I will watch Paul Bettany read a phone book. Like, just his accent is lovely. Same with McAvoy, but in his regular accent, which is not the accent he used in this film. So I would probably say if we're just going, yeah, okay. I try and fix them. I do. I'm a fixer.
Kyle, what about you? Who's your crush?
Come on, even though I'm not 100% her in this movie, Kirsten Dunst. I mean, the looks, the smile. Like I said, this is where she truly is like the all-American girl in this film.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
You know, it's just she. This is the kind of girl you want to have a relationship with.
All right, guys. Next, we have got some movie trivia. So getting the actress to play professional-looking tennis proved much more difficult than anticipated. Eventually, it was decided to film them performing the strokes and digitally adding the ball afterwards, as we discussed earlier, which I thought was a smart move to do. And I got to tell you, did pretty well with the special effects, I'm just going to say. And then we did touch on this earlier. Scenes for the film were filmed during the Wimbledon tournament in 2003. Of course, this came out in 2004. The actors would walk out on court at the beginning or end of each match as though they were really competing. The officials and spectators were actual tennis officials and spectators rather than extras. It's the only time in history of the tournament that this has been allowed. And the movie cast professional but little-known tennis players to play against the stars. And the director's commentary, Richard Longcrane, shared that he met an upcoming female tennis player, but rejected her as she looked too similar to Kirsten Dunst. She was Maria Sharapova. Anyone hear of her? Before she went on to win several Grand Slam titles, including Wimbledon. What was that, Kyle?
Yeah, Sharapova. Something about that name rings a bell. I can't.
And let's see here. The scenes, of course, showing the public queuing outside Wimbledon were in fact shot at the London Zoo, simply because it looked more interesting, and I'll show a picture of that soon. And this came from Reddit. In Wimbledon 2004, a news report about the comet symbolizing Peter Colt's winning streak says it was the first time in 67 years it's appeared. At the time of the movie, the last Englishman to win the Wimbledon was Fred Perry 67 years previously. And I also liked in the commentary, if you remember, Lacey, they were talking about how when both Peter and Kirsten Dunst's character Lizzie were looking up at the comet, but they didn't show the comet, and they felt that it was better that they didn't. So that was kind of cool. Yeah.
Reaction is always better.
So speaking of the front of the zoo, here is a picture of the London Zoo. This was the entrance to Wimbledon, because it looked a lot more interesting than the real entrance to Wimbledon there. So yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't the entrance to Wimbledon literally like a fence in like a big old thing of ivy?
Yeah, not interesting. That doesn't look cool.
Yeah, it's not. There's no. Yeah, I feel like I haven't been there, but I feel like I've seen the picture or something.
So when I was watching this film, I noticed something interesting. I noticed the skyline. Now, if you guys look at this picture here, you'll see in the background that construction is finishing on the new skyscraper called the Gherkin. And it is known as the Big Bullet, and it's very distinctive in the London skyline. And after plans to build a 92-story Millennium Tower was dropped, they decided to start building this bullet building called the Gherkin. It was built by Skansa Construction, which started in 2001. And the Gherkin, formerly at 30 St. Mary Axe, previously known as the Swiss Rebuilding, is a commercial skyscraper in London's primary financial district, the City of London. It was completed in December of 2003. This is when this was filming, guys, and you notice the cranes around the top of it in this picture here. Because here's what it looks like nowadays. And I've been near this thing. This thing is phenomenal. It's gorgeous. But what's funny is it makes this thing basically 20 years old as of this film. And it's fun to see stuff like that in movies, and it gives you a stamp in time. And there's a really cool, I guess, a big place you can have lunch in there as well. And I think Basic Instinct 2 filmed in there, if I remember correctly.
Well, that's
I can't,
cut.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm having a vague memory of that. I think that's where Catherine Trammell had an office or something like that, or what's his name from The Walking Dead, the governor. He was the male lead in that film. I think he was in that as well. But yeah, so there you go. It did finally. It completed in December 2003 and opened in April of 2004. And because this movie's filmed in and around London, and London is such a wonderful place to visit, I did want to talk about. Of course, this location here, guys, this, of course, is the city of Brighton. And I've been to Brighton before, but I haven't been since like 2000 and I want to say around this time, maybe. I was going there for like a little vacation before I went to a convention. And it's a beautiful little town. I had a friend that lived there. But what's really cool, you can't really tell in this picture, but this is the beach. And then, of course, that is the Brighton Pier. It is gorgeous. But the sand is not normal sands. It's rocks and pebbles. It's the weirdest thing. But they got wonderful fish and chips along the beach there. It's gorgeous. And it's not shown in this picture, but you can see the remnants of the old pier that like burned down like a long, long time ago. But no one's gone to remove all of the wrought iron pillars that still exist there. It's pretty cool to see that. So, yes.
Just a note, I Googled to see what had been filmed at the Gherkin, and oddly, Match Point, the other tennis movie from...
Oh, yeah, the one with...
Yep, and then another...
Woody Allen and Scarlett Johansson.
Right, and then the other, another MCU little notch is that Thor: The Dark World was filmed, had several scenes inside the Gherkin.
There you go, yeah. So this one here is, I thought this looked familiar. This is where the Posh Private Club was filmed. And this is a Goldfinger Bond location. Bond plays Goldfinger, plays golf here. And also, too, it's also where another Bond film, Tomorrow Never Dies, was also filmed. And Bridget spent a naughty weekend with Daniel Cleaver in Bridget Jones's Diary at this location. So, yeah. Very, very pretty.
Got the Hugh Grant crossover after all.
There you go. Yeah. And this is, of course, is the Dorchester Hotel, which was prominently featured in this film. And that's I've been wanting to visit this one. I didn't think about visiting it while I was there, though. But this is a building that's been around for a very, very long time and has a long place in history as well. But you remember that little fight scene they had with your crush, basically? Well, that was at the London Eye, which is basically a huge, what do you call it?
Ferris wheel.
Ferris wheel.
Thank you. Very huge Ferris wheel. Beautiful. Sticks out there. Some people say it's an eyesore, depending on who you ask. I think it's pretty. And I've actually been in it. It's pretty cool. There's a picture of me there.
Yes.
And these pods can hold up to like 20, 25 people, I think it is. It's enormous. And I believe it takes about an hour to do one full rotation. And it's really cool. I recommend doing it during the day and at night, but mostly during the day so you can get really good shots of the city. And I went in there with our group, and my wife and I were there. We got some pictures, and I got a big selfie I took with everyone while we were in it. It's pretty cool.
Okay, I am claustrophobic, and I'm not big on heights. So
so that's a no for you? Is that what you're saying?
I did it. It was one of the longest hours of my life. I spent a portion of it with my face, like with my nose against like the top button of my dad's shirt, just like like. I looked every once in a while, like, oh yeah, that's pretty, yeah, and then
okay. So no for you on the London Eye.
No.
All right, guys. I want to wrap this up here. I want to talk about sequels, remakes, TV series. Where do you sit on that? We obviously get a nice little kind of wrap up at the end of the film. They get together, they get married, they have a kid. We find out that Lizzie's won the U.S. Open, won Wimbledon twice. Where do you stand on a sequel, remake, or a limited TV series run? Kyle, I want to start with you.
I think if you're going to do it at this point, I could see it as a streaming remake, like maybe like a 8 to 10 episode Netflix kind of thing, where they kind of can play it out a little bit more. But I think the magic of this movie is it's really one of those movies that just stands alone. It's got a great runtime. It's a tight fit story, but it tells a great story in a short period of time. And to be honest with you, I can't think of two people who are going to have better chemistry than these two in this film right now. But yeah, I think if you're going to say, okay, I'm doing something with Wimbledon, I think you've got to do it as kind of a streaming prestige TV series.
Right. Yeah. That would be kind of fun. Got to spread out a little bit. Maybe even have a little history with like Jon Favreau's agent character first, and like when he first drops him, maybe that'd be kind of funny.
Well, I can even see
his Wimbledon fall, something like that.
I even some flashbacks to Peter Colt in his younger days on the tour.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Lacey, what about you? What do you want to see? Do you want to see a sequel, remake, TV series? What do you think?
Unnecessary. I think this is I think it's great the way it is. I think it was a good story. I don't think it could be done the same way today. I think it would be too many cell phones and all this kind of crap. Like, I think it would just be too overdone because I think social media would affect the film too much. And I think it was well done the way it is. I don't think I need any more. Like, you already got what quota. You got that little tag at the end where you see them. They're living in the United States and he's teaching tennis and all that kind of stuff, like with his kids and everything. And I think that's like kind of the right ending.
What I think would be really cool. I agree with you a little bit there, Lacey, but there's something about the chemistry between these two that I need to see more of. And here's a picture I have of them promoting the film on the red carpet, or green carpet, so to speak. And it's a great picture of Paul and Kirsten dressed up. And there's a great picture here of Paul and his wife, Jennifer. I personally would love to see a sequel, but of their kid now doing tennis, and kind of seeing the competitive side and how tennis has changed a little bit, and how, when you got the Williams sisters now just being brand names everywhere. And I would love to kind of see them take this to another thing and see them, not necessarily being the main stars, but being there, and then maybe them having a challenge in their own relationship. Jon Favreau returns. Of course, he's like the number one sports agent in the world. I think it'd be great if like Tom Brady walked in, and decides to sign with him. It shows how powerful Jon Favreau is because he is now in real life with Star Wars fans. I just see there's so much fun you can have. John McAvoy, McAvoy, not John McAvoy, but McAvoy can come in for a hot minute. Let's say he's doing the Tour de France. He can make a comment about that American guy that was juicing. I don't know, just something kind of funny. I see all of these little things that could still happen and just show the chemistry between these two. Have I sold you guys on that? No.
It's a nice thought because the chemistry, you want to see more of the chemistry between these two. But I think the problem is I don't think you can get the same romantic comedy, the romance side magic that you have in this film. I think you end up getting too caught up in the tennis side of things because here you have basically child prodigy of these two superstar tennis players.
Yeah.
And realistically, you already have the visual of what the relationship is with them bringing up a child prodigy because you see both her father, and his parents and how they're doing. So you already have that storyline. It's just current.
There's a part of me though that wants to see Sam Neill and I'm sorry, what's his name? The father of Peter Colt, just sharing a scene together with like a grandkid. I mean, come on. How cute would that be? I would love to see
that.
That would be cute. That would actually be comedy because you can imagine the different styles in tennis teachings.
Oh God, yes. Yeah. So it's there. I'm just saying, and it'd be kind of fun too, is maybe like also show something in the Australian Grand Slam or something like that. Take it to these other countries where tennis is also very, very popular. So all right, guys, let's get your final thoughts on this film. Maybe a little perspective when you first saw it and now. And where does this sit in your rom-com fandom? Is it at the top? That's kind of where I want to gauge this with you guys. Like, give me your favorite rom-com if you have one, and take Wimbledon and kind of see if it fits in there somewhere. Kyle, let's start with you.
Again, this is, I think, one of those movies that is just, it's what movies are supposed to be, which is escapism and make you feel good and have a smile on your face. And you get caught up in the comedy, you get caught up in the romance, you get caught up in the cast. Everything about this movie is just makes you feel good. And that's why we go to the movies. And that's something that this is why this movie is movie magic. As far as for me personally with like the rom-com thing, this is easily in my top 3 rom-coms. It's probably it might even be number 2 because for me, my favorite all-time rom-com is definitely Maybe with Ryan Reynolds.
Definitely Maybe.
Yeah.
Nice. Little Ryan Reynolds in there. Gotcha.
Yeah. But it's the relationship in this one that just sells me. And it's the chemistry between them. And that to me, that's something that a lot of romantic comedies throughout history, they try to be good, but when the chemistry is there, it makes something special, and the chemistry is overflowing in Wimbledon.
Yeah. Lacey, what about you? What's your favorite rom-com, and where does this one stand compared to it?
It's funny because I hadn't seen this in a very long time, and now I think it's going to definitely kind of go into my rotation. Top 20 maybe. I mean, let's face it, I have a lot to choose from. So
I'm gonna want you to nail it down here. What's your favorite rom-com of all time?
Oof. I mean, I want to go with Say Anything. I want to go kind of like 80s, somewhere in there. But I think Beautiful Girls is probably the number 1 for me.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. All right.
I honestly don't even know if that qualifies as a rom-com necessarily. It's more of like a group com.
Well, think about the formula. You got a couple, they go through trials, they got family that gets in the way a little bit, and then they end up together in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I Pretty Woman is fantastic. Love Pretty Woman.
Yeah,
there you go.
There
you go. Yeah, that's a good one.
There's one called something. It's Hugh Grant and Hugh Jackman and Meg Ryan, and it's in time, and it's something. I can't remember the name of it.
I thought you were talking about the Hugh Jackman and Ashley Judd one.
Yeah,
Something
I'm a
about
big fan of that movie.
I love that movie.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman has some very underrated rom-coms. He really does. Mm-hmm.
Well, my favorite rom-com of all time is Notting Hill. Before it used to be Sleepless in Seattle, but it just right now it's Notting Hill. And having visited the Notting Hill location and the Blue Door, and they've all kind of embraced that movie, and it's really kind of funny to see all the tourists kind of go around and find the Blue Door, which you can. It's there. And this one here, I'm sorry, what's that, Lacey?
My dad grew up there. My dad grew up doing his little boat in the little pond right outside the Blue Door.
Yeah, it's a beautiful location. My wife used to live in London for a while, for about 7 years, from like the late 90s to around 2000, I think it was 7, I think it was. Yeah. And she had spent time there. She was familiar with the area. But when it comes to Wimbledon, I got to say it's definitely in my top 3. I got to kind of really look at that genre a little bit more, because I love rom-coms. I mean, come on, I'm a Hallmark, guy. So it's in my blood, and I love it. And I find these movies great escapes, and I love seeing the couple end up together. Finding out how they get there is a good thing. But I find it funny that my favorite rom-coms are both filmed in and around London. Yeah. Kyle.
Just the Hugh Jackman, Ashley Judd movie we were talking about was Someone Like You.
Right.
Someone Like You, yep.
The one where it's with Hugh Jackman and Meg Ryan. She travels back in the
it's Kate and Leopold.
Kate and Leopold.
Yes. The one where he time travels into current day. Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I need to see that again. That was a cute film.
And I did love 2 Weeks Notice. That's another fun one. It's a Hugh Grant kind of fun, Sandra Bullock, Hugh Grant.
The one that's getting a lot of tread for me and my wife, and you brought up Ryan Reynolds, is The Proposal.
Yes.
That's another good one.
Yes.
That one is just becoming high on my rewatch list, and I think it's getting a second buzz because of that. It's very rewatchable. It's a great film. So, all right, guys, just one final comment about this, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Lacey, your final thoughts on Wimbledon?
If you haven't seen it, watch it. If you have seen it, watch it again. Enjoy.
There you go. I love it. Kyle.
It's a great movie to watch on Valentine's Day. Watch it with somebody you care about. It's going to make you both feel good, put a smile on your face, and make you feel the love.
I'm glad you said that, Kyle, because when you first recommended this film for Valentine's Day, I never really considered it a Valentine's Day movie, but why not? It's a good movie to watch when you're not with someone, and it's a good movie to watch when you're with someone. And sometimes when you're not with someone, you just need a good movie to escape with and live vicariously through others. And that's one of the reasons why I love films, because I do that often. That's why I love going to movies alone. I can, just jump into the moment and lose myself for a couple hours. And this is definitely one of those films. And it's one of the most charming films, romantic comedies, that I personally enjoy for so many reasons. Well, guys, this is the Fandom Podcast Network. You are watching and or listening to Wimbledon 2004, celebrating its 20th anniversary. And we're doing that here on the Fandom Podcast Network. And of course, we're recording this on Valentine's Day. Please subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. We'd appreciate that. Share it out. Give us a like. We'd appreciate that. Maybe comments too. You can find our master feed for all of our audio podcasts on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. And please look for us on all the major podcast platforms. Of course, Apple Podcast, iTunes. We're also on Facebook, Fandom Podcast Network. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. And Fandom Podcast Network is also on Instagram and X. My name is Kevin Reitzel. I am on X, Instagram, and Threads at Spartan_Phoenix. Kyle, where can we find you?
Don't choke. You got this. Don't choke. You can find me on X at AKyleW. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at AKyleFandom, and you can also find me walking into strangers' hotel rooms and finding them in certain shower scenes, but they'll never give me quite the smiling face that Kirsten Dunst gives. I don't know.
Not creepy at all, Kyle. Not creepy at all.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Lacey, thank you so much. And of course, as I mentioned last time, I'm going to say it again. I always appreciate you joining us and appreciate your movie knowledge. And I'm so grateful that you're with us here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Where can people find you if they wish?
Well, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Lacey Pants. And
Awesome.
I just signed up. Somebody got me to sign up for
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky. That's the
Yes.
new one. I have no idea what I'm doing. So probably not. Don't follow me yet. I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah. So I think there's the only spots other than on here, with you guys. So
well, can we see what the Queen of Movie Foo is watching on Letterboxd?
Oh yeah, I'm on Letterboxd. I am woefully behind with adding things to Letterboxd right now. I actually have like a whole set of them a whole stack that I need to scan in. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on the Fandom Podcast Network on Valentine's Day for Wimbledon. Such a wonderful film. If you haven't seen it, please do. Please share it out. Let people know about this podcast. And please, as I said, please follow us on YouTube. Again, my name is Kevin. I'd like to thank my co-host here, Kyle. Thank you so much for, first of all, bringing this to the table. And Lacey, thank you so much for, as always, for being our co-pilot on the Fandom Podcast Network. And until
Kevin,
next time. Oh, yes.
It was my pleasure. But I also, too, need to say it is time to end this podcast because I need to go get some fish and chips.
You need to get some fish and chips, yes.
Yeah.
I do recommend getting nice fish and chips while you're in Brighton. It is really, really good. So, yeah. All right, guys, until next time, we will see you on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.